Hi crafty peeps, it's Kat. Today's card is all about visual drama. Light florals, black background, the opposites attract kind of situation. If high contrast dramatic cards are your thing, you're in the right place. In today's video, I'll break down a couple of ways you can create that drama yourself. Let's take a look at the supplies first. I got a trio of dies here from Memory Box, and this card is going to be pretty die cut heavy. I've noticed that I'm really attracted to the intricate dies that are a big pain in the behind to put together, but I think that the payoff is really worth it. So I got a set of full blooms and a separate set of little bud flowers. And I got a half frame with some leaves and branches. This frame die cuts two of the branches separately, even though the die itself is all in one piece. And I got a honeybee woodgrain embossing folder for some subtle but beautiful texture. And of course, some inks to color our die cuts. Full list will be in the description box below. Okay, so very first thing I'm gonna do is cut all of my parts out of the plain white cardstock. And the frame I will cut twice, once from white and once from gold. And here I must apologize, guys. I forgot to hit record and only realized after I colored all of my die cuts, but I'll quickly talk you through it. With the peachy color, which is my lightest orange, and a medium brush, I went over all of my flower petals, trying to focus mostly in the center and leaving the tips very light or almost white. Then with the darker orange and a smaller brush, I darkened the centers of the petals even further. Then with an even smaller brush, I colored the edges of those tiny die cuts you see on the right. These pieces will create the detail on the petals. For my foliage, I first used the dew color to do just the tips of the leaves, and then added a darker raindrop color at the very base of the leaves. Then with the brown maca color, I did the centers of the flowers, the branches, and the frame too. The background will be black, so I didn't want the frame to have a white edge because that would be quite noticeable on black. So off screen, I went through all of the pieces and paired them up and assembled them into the flowers. I just followed the picture on the packaging and it wasn't difficult to figure out at all. To be clear, nothing is glued together yet. I like to do a dry run, so to speak, because I don't want to be unpleasantly surprised when I'm gluing things together, because that happened before. And those tiny little strips you saw earlier are the details to make it look like as if the petal is kind of folding over. And like I mentioned before, I cut the frame twice. The white piece was the one that I colored, and I'm gonna give my gold frame piece a little haircut. I don't want the gold leaves to cover up my inking, so I'm gonna very carefully cut them off so that I'm left with the gold frame piece only. And I'm gonna save those gold leaves from the frame for another project. So I flipped the frame to the back side so I can see the edge better, and I'm just very carefully cutting those off. And once I have my frame portion cut, I'm gonna go ahead and glue that onto my colored piece right away. I'm putting a thin line of liquid glue on the back of the frame, and it's kind of thin and delicate, so I'm trying hard not to get the glue everywhere. I'll then gently kind of press and pinch the edges of the frame so it all lines up nicely. I feel like adding gold or any other metallic can give your card that little extra something something. Once I'm done, I'll put something heavy on top and let the glue dry. I'm going to show you how I assemble one of the full blooms and one of the buds, but I'm not going to show you all of the flowers because the process is pretty much the same and I don't want to bore you. And also apologies for my head getting in the way. I just wanted to make sure that all of my pieces line up nicely. So the first thing you want to do is glue on those little details for the petals because the petals themselves overlap quite a bit and you don't want to struggle trying to glue that tiny little piece on later. Here you see me gluing those little details onto both of the petals first. And again, I'm just following the example on the packaging. I'm trying to get those tiny strips lined up with the very, very edge of the petal die cut. Then you just layer the petals together. And I'm only putting the glue here on the parts that will touch and overlap. Like, I'm not gonna lie, these die cuts were a tad finicky and time consuming, but the devil is often in the details, so I think it was definitely worth the effort because flowers look absolutely gorgeous. If you like puzzles, I think you would really like putting the die cuts together, or maybe even doing die cut inlays. It was kind of hard not to get the glue everywhere with these. So I got the first two layers glued together and my third layer will go on top to kind of cover up that middle portion of the flower. The last step is to attach that little stem piece. I think that's what it's called. And here's the flower up close for you. Look how pretty it is and look at all of that detail that you have on the petals. It's so pretty. Oh my gosh. Putting together the bud flowers is Pretty much the same process, just with the fewer and smaller parts. You glue the little detail piece on first, then layer the petals together. For buds, it's only 2 petals for all of them. And then you attach that green stem thingy on top. If there are actually any botanists watching this, can you guys let me know what the proper name is for that green stem thing? I don't know what it's called. Let me know down below in the comments. And here's a completed little bud for you guys. So I've assembled all of the flowers and look at how beautiful these things are. I got a little bit obsessed with these dies, so spoiler alert, I made more than one card with it and I'll show you all of them at the end. Next, I'm gonna emboss my background. I got my spray bottle and I'll mist my pre-cut panel on both sides and will blot it with the paper towel to remove excess moisture. I just need damp cardstock, not wet cardstock. I'll then line the panel up inside of the embossing folder, close it, and run it through my die cutting machine. And look at all this texture. It's not the most in-your-face pattern or design, and I would say it's definitely more on the subtle side, but it's so darn gorgeous. I honestly didn't expect it to like it as much as I did. Okay, now I'm gonna try to figure out how I want my card to go. You can certainly do it in the landscape orientation too, with the frame either at the top or at the bottom. The sky's the limit here. I'm sticking with the portrait orientation like I typically do though. Before I glue everything down, I'm just gonna play around with the flowers and the layout until I'm happy with the arrangement. I do know though that I want my larger flowers towards the bottom and the buds towards the top. I feel like that makes for a more balanced arrangement. So I'll move things around, tuck some of the flowers behind some of the leaves, tuck some branches in here and there. And while I'm at it, I'm also kind of paying attention which flowers are covering up which leaves. I don't want to waste any of the leaves that I inked, so I'll cut the ones that would be covered up and will reuse them in a different place on the card. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm also letting my blooms hang off of the edge of the card in this design, and I'll just use a larger A6 envelope to accommodate for that overhang. Here I'm just very carefully cutting off the leaves that are not going to be visible under the flowers. All right, let's start gluing it all together. Here I got a little hack for you. If you need to line up your panel and your card base, the best way to do it is by using the corner of your scoring board. You just shove your card base right into the left upper corner, hold it down with one hand, and then you grab your panel with the glue on it and shove that right into the corner as well, and then press it down. It comes out perfectly aligned every time. I'm gluing my frame down first, straight to the panel. I'm not popping it up or anything because it's not the main character here. But you certainly can pop this up for some additional dimension. You can use a very thin foam tape, or you can stack several die cuts behind each other. Then once I have it in place, I'll press it all down and put something heavy on top to make sure it adheres. While that dries, I will put some black foam squares pretty much on all of the flowers because those guys I do actually want to have popped up pretty significantly. I'm using black squares here because my background is black, so it will look pretty seamless. If you were to use white foam squares, they would actually be pretty noticeable from the side. So for the flowers, I'll use 2mm thickness, and for some of the leaves and branches, I'll use thinner 1mm ones, just to have some variety in height. When I'm ready to adhere the flowers, I'll put some glue on the back of the square so that I have some slip and, time to move things if I don't stick the landing on the first try. Also for the branches and leaves, I'm only gonna glue some parts of them down while leaving others adhesive free. While I'm doing all of that gluing, let's talk about the ways in which you can create some visual drama for your cards. Listen, I ain't no expert designer or color theorist, but I have learned a few things and I would like to share them with you. So in my humble opinion, the visual drama comes from contrast and juxtaposition first and foremost. What I mean by contrast is how light and how dark are some of your elements or your background and your foreground. The greater the difference, the more impact you will have. So think black and white. Another thing to consider is what colors are you using? Are they complementary, meaning are they across from each other on the color wheel? Or are they analogous, meaning they're right next to each other on the color wheel? Complementary colors will usually give you more contrast than analogous ones. Think, for example, of red and green, like your traditional Christmas colors. They're opposite of each other on the color wheel, and they happen to go pretty well together. Now, that's not to say that you can't create contrast with, say, a very light green and a very dark blue, which are next to each other on the color wheel, but it's much easier accomplished with complementary colors rather than with analogous. Now let's take a look at the color anatomy of this particular card. Let's look at all of the elements. So point numero uno, I have a black background and very light flowers. Pretty much any lighter color I put on top of black, it's gonna immediately make those colors pop. If you feel intimidated by black, which I know I really was in the beginning, you can substitute dark navy or a dark purple, for example. But then you do need to think about the colors for your flowers and leaves that would go well with blue or the purple. Point numero dos. If you look at the color of my leaves and flowers and locate them on the color wheel, you'll see they're almost entirely complementary. My leaves are way more blue and teal kind of color leaning rather than proper green. This was on purpose, because now I have contrast not only between the foreground, which is light, and the background, which is dark, but also between the elements themselves. And because of all of the variation in the lightness and the darkness and the complementary colors, this card packs quite a visual punch. What about you guys? Do you typically go for the dramatic high contrast look, or do you lean more towards softer color combos? Let me know down in the comments. What's your favorite way to create contrast on the cards? And look at this beauty. Oh, I'm so happy with how this card is coming together. For my sentiment, I had some laying around from another project. I used the press plate to foil them on black cardstock, and that gold foil will tie in nicely with the gold that I have in my frame. Here you can see that press plate I foiled the sentiments with, and it comes with the die that cuts out all of them at once. All I had to do is just cut some plain backings for my sentiments to make it a little more sturdy. And here you see me gluing them all together. You don't have to do this, but if you will mail your card, I definitely recommend it because it prevents creases from the sorting machine at the post office. For some extra dimension, I've also put the 2mm foam squares on the back of the sentiment, and I'll use my T-square ruler to help me get it straight. I usually butt up the edge of the sentiment right against the edge of the ruler. And once I'm happy, I'll carefully press it all down and put something heavy on top to adhere. Since my card base is black, I will glue in a white panel on the inside where I can write my personal message. This is completely optional. You could use a white gel pen to write your message, but I do like me a panel on the inside since it makes the card sturdier, and also I tend to always smudge my gel pens. I'm not gonna stamp on the back of the card like I typically do since the black ink won't show up on black cardstock, so I'll call this card done. I'm super happy with how this card came out, and I love all of the shine from the gold cardstock and the foil. And like I mentioned, I got a little bit obsessed with these dies, so I went ahead and made two more cards. One where I left the flowers white and only inked the centers with pink, so like a proper magnolia flower, and another one on a white background, just because I was curious of what that would look like. As you can see, it's still absolutely gorgeous, but I don't think it carries the same visual punch as the other two with black background. Which one is your favorite? Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye!